Oh, we're also not good at multitasking. Anyone else doing other stuff now? I know one's doing homework, but he's got an excuse. Yeah, tweeting doesn't really count because that's just biologically built into what we are, right? So when I spoke at the GTD Summit, I think in one panel I was on, 2/3 of the people were on Twitter, and I was like tweeting from the panel, and there was a woman in my audience, and I was like, oh yeah, I recognize her from her avatar. Hello, she tweeted back to me. It was really cool. So also staying on track. Yeah, I didn't finish that, but staying on track. That's the brain's really bad for staying on track. You may have like short-term, mid-term, long-term goals, but unless you have some sort of system for keeping track of all that, you get to the New Year's party. This is before the champagne, when you actually still can think. And you look at what are my goals, and what were my goals last year, and you achieved like 1 out of 18 goals last year. And then, but notice that it's really after the champagne that people promise what they're going to do in the new year, not before. If they waited, if they didn't, anyway, much better to do it before the champagne than after because you'd be more realistic. But staying on track. Let's stay on track. So what David Allen likes to say is your brain doesn't have a brain. If your brain had a brain, you wouldn't need any of this stuff. But your brain isn't very good at managing itself. So you need some kind of a system to help you do that. So no big surprise there so far. Now, GTD is really what I would call it an integrated set of principles and practices, because all the principles and practices and all the tools you'll read about and all the techniques, they all kind of play together. So that's why I call it integrated. And it's for achieving not just productivity, but stress-free productivity. So it's a very, very ambitious goal. So the idea is you should be able to be as creative, crazy creative, and do anything you want and still not lose control and perspective. So how many of you have ever had a day when you felt like you could do both? Because I until recently didn't have that a lot. But it is possible. So I'll talk a little bit about how to do that. Now, if you have no perspective and no control, you're pretty much a victim, right? And so I gladly stole this illustration from David's books. Basically you have to deal with what's coming at you. You don't really have much choice as to what's happening. And you may be stuck at work in some little cubicle just doing what you're told, and it's a pretty miserable existence. And even those of us who feel like we're pretty organized and have perspective and have control and everything, sometimes we'll just go a few days with letting everything go, and then all of a sudden we feel like we're down in that corner and we're a victim. And then we have to do something to straighten ourselves out. Now, if you've got lots of control but still not that much perspective, you're the classic micromanager. Yeah? I'll just avoid this end of the stage because when I go here, the sound gets bad. Hello? 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 No. So there are lots of people like that. In my organizational consulting, I used to be really cynical, and I would just call those people middle management. But that's really mean, because often they're just not given the information. But a lot of us feel like we're really in a good place in terms of having control over the day-to-day stuff, but we don't necessarily have perspective as to where we want to go for the rest of the year, the next 2-3 years. We never really get around to dealing with that. Now, of course, I'm more over here, some people say, sometimes. They'll remain anonymous. Anyway, and that's where we have lots of perspective and lots of ideas and everything, but you don't necessarily have so much control over the execution of those ideas. And the challenge for those people is really to really improve the amount of control that they have so they can trust themselves more to be crazy and creative. Because if you're in this place and you have lots of perspective but less and less control, then you start feeling more and more constrained as to what you can really trust yourself with doing, and you will start censoring yourself instead of having great ideas and pursuing new things. Now, ideally where you'd like to be is to be someone. I'm being told not to touch the mic, because apparently when I tap the mic, that's really annoying. Can you still hear me? Okay. Cool. And we'll edit out the tapping later, I'm sure. So if you are someone who can have great ideas and trust yourself and just go pursue all sorts of stuff and still be able to keep in control and keep organized with what you're doing, that's kind of the ideal state of being. No one really stays there all the time, but GTD can help you be there much of the time. Or if you fall out of that bracket, you can still get back in fairly easily. So how do you take control? Well, GTD kind of gives us 5 steps to take control of our workflow. So the first step is to collect everything that you have in your surroundings, whether it's your ideas or what you have in your physical surroundings, like papers and unopened mail and hey, an email in your computer and all that stuff that's coming at you. Just gather it all up, and then second, process it. So that means making decisions about what that is and what it means to you. Is it something you can throw away? Is it, oops, this is a whole new project, and I got to call Bob or Tom or whomever. Hear that, Tom? Yeah. Or it's not really a project, it's just like an errand I have to do. Or, hey, this is something I was waiting for from before, and now here it is. Cool. I'll just file it. So once you go through all of that stuff, you have to make decisions about how do you organize all of this on multiple horizons. Maybe some of it belongs to longer-term goals, and some of it, fits in a tickler file system that you use to remind yourself of something that's coming up, or some of it just goes into your alphabetical filing system. So that's what organizing is all about. And then you have to review this on a regular basis so that you retain your perspective as well. When you have all of that organized, and I'll iterate once more through this with more detail. When you have all of that organized, then you can trust yourself to engage with everything that you gathered up and put into your system, so you make good choices about what you're going to do next. So let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail. So first is the collecting part, and so I typically I would recognize 3 categories of stuff you collect. It's pieces of paper and mail, that kind of thing that would normally go into your physical in basket. Then there's sort of electronic stuff that comes at you, all your email accounts and all of that. And then it's whatever is rattling around in your brain, since the last time you looked at this very carefully. And the idea is the less you keep in your head, the more you can use your head for actually generating new stuff and being creative. So you get it all out, and nice little checklist that you can use to get stuff out of your head to remind you of things that have to do with your healthcare, your finances, your stuff at work, stuff at home, those sorts of categories. Handy checklist that they'll give you. Once you have that, then you have to make those decisions we talked about. Is this something I can throw away? Is it something I have to act on right away? Does it go on a list of stuff to do someday at some point when I get around to it, or maybe never? There. And once you have that, it needs to go into a system that you can trust, filing system, folders on your computer. How many of you use your mobile device to store important notes and passwords? And 2, 3, 4? Yeah, there's a really cool app. If you have an iPhone, it's called Evernote. Anyone using that? Yeah, and I'm like addicted. I have like 1 billion notes on Evernote, and it syncs, it has a PC client, a web client, Mac client, and it syncs with everything. And if anyone ever gets hacked into that, they'll destroy my life. But anyway, that's very handy for keeping critical information. But whatever tools you have are going to change, right? Because there are new tools coming out all the time. Lots of innovation in this area. What really counts is that you are focusing on keeping your head clear. And there's always new innovations. You're never going to have the perfect implementation of that trusted system. The key thing is that it's good enough that you trust it. So once you've organized everything, then your review kind of looks at multiple levels. And there are different reviews that you do with GTD at different times. So probably every day or maybe several times a day, you look at your list of next actions, potential next actions that you can do, depending on whether you are driving, and of course it's illegal to phone driving. But anyway, you are somewhere where you can use your mobile phone, or you're at a cafe with your laptop, or you're at the beach, or and then you can see, well, what can I do now, right? So you're out shopping, maybe you look at your errands list. That's sort of daily or several times a day. Then once a week, what you want to do is look at your projects. Projects, sort of anything that requires more than one action step to get to the result you want to get to. And you look at your projects, your calendar, you scan ahead a little bit. That's called a weekly review. It takes 1 to 2 hours. If you do that regularly, you pretty much keep most of the noise out.